The 11th season of Ninjago introduced us to Clutch powers, but the thing is that Clutch wasn't an entirely original character. He came from a movie that released 9 years before his Ninjago debut, but the thing is that there's been a lot of debate and a lot of controversy when it does come to the character. Because there is a very obvious disconnect between the Clutch powers that we saw in his movie in comparison to the Clutch powers in the 11-minute era, and a lot of people have wondered if they're even linked in any way. And the thing is, not only do I think I could link them, I could also justify every single interaction we have ever seen when it does come to Clutch. And honestly, I'm very excited for you guys to hear me out, because I think I know the timeline of Clutch powers, so I want to know what you guys think. But of course, this is ultimately my own interpretation, so if you do disagree with me, please leave it in the comments down below. But apart from that, the only thing I want to get out of the way is that the movie is not canon to Ninjago. It physically cannot be canon. I know a lot of people have had explanations for how it could have been, such as it's a literal movie within the Ninjago universe, but personally speaking, I do not think that is the case. But let me actually get down to what Clutch powers actually went through throughout the course of Ninjago. So, sit back, relax, and let's talk about Clutch. Now, of course, I have just established that I don't consider the movie canon in any way, but that doesn't mean I can't take aspects from that movie and apply it to Ninjago. The thing is that I believe that the Clutch powers that we see within the movie is the same Clutch powers that we do get within Ninjago. I'm just simply transplanting the character from one movie to another show. But how does that work? Because they seemingly have very disconnected personalities. Movie Clutch is this brave, determined and hard-working explorer. He has a team of explorers with him as well, and he tries his best to lead them all to the treasures that they want. This version of Clutch is very interesting to see because he is very upbeat. He is very much what you would expect from Clutch powers, and that is what a lot of people do want from the character of Clutch. This character that seemingly is this infallible hero type. But the thing is that we then get to our 11-minute era Clutch, which just seems to be very lazy, seems to be very self-indulgent, very self-entitled, and seems to just not really care ultimately. The thing is that he does have his moments, but on a grand scheme, he doesn't really want to do what he actually does by the looks of it. I mean, that's no further exemplified than one of his first appearances. The pyramid which a sphere is in, Clutch very clearly doesn't even want to be there. So you may be wondering, how do these two Clutches connect in any sort of way? Because they are literally polar opposites. But the thing is that I have a feeling I can dissect exactly what happened to Clutch. But to do that, we need to track back in Ninjago's timeline, and we need to go back to the first season of the show. Now, a lot of people will say in retrospect that this didn't really mean anything, and ultimately this is kind of just moot, but Clutch is mentioned in season 1. Regardless on how you feel about it, Clutch is technically canonized in that very moment. So, how do we know what kind of Clutch powers he was back in that era? And that's the thing. I think it's movie Clutch, because what else would they be referencing for one, and two, it makes complete sense in terms of a timeline. The version of Clutch that we get mentioned in season 1 sounds like movie Clutch, because by all accounts it is. We get remarked that he was the one who made the Fangblade Cup, and of course that sounds much more in line with Clutch powers, someone who has found this artifact, has made a trophy out of it, and has given it away to the community at large. It sounds very much like movie Clutch, so it makes sense to believe that that is exactly what we were hearing about. So we have a point in time where we could identify movie Clutch, and we also then have 11-minute Clutch. So what happened between the events of season 1 and season 11? Well, I actually think it came down to 3 separate things that made movie Clutch into show Clutch. The first one, actually, I think is the presence of the ninja. The thing is that he was seemingly big on exploration and finding artifacts before the point of the ninja. But after the ninja, it seemingly seems to be the case that he's almost fallen off. And it kind of gets proven in the fact that when he initially meets the ninja, he just seems so unbothered by them, almost like he just didn't really want to interact with them. So what if there is a correlation between the ninja and Clutch powers in a weird way? Because you could almost apply it to what the ninja actually do. Remember, as of the point of season 1, the ninja went out and found the golden weapons. They also went and found the rest of the Fang blades. The thing is that what if Clutch was after all 4 of the Fang blades? Or what if he was after the golden weapons? Or any of the other artifacts that the ninja have acquired over the years? What if that was a direct link to Clutch essentially not really wanting to do what he did? If the artifacts were getting found by others, what was the point of Clutch? And like I said, this does link back to his interactions with the ninja. He is so reluctant to even interact with them. It's so interesting to see that he just seems to have this disdain for them. And the thing is that the other reasons that I do have do link back to this. But I really do think the ninja played a part in his ultimate downfall. The fact is that he did seemingly have a lot going for him until the ninja came to be. So what is the suggestion that there isn't some sort of link? It honestly does make a lot of sense. The second reason I believe Clutch Powers ultimately became what we saw in the show was actually down to his ultimate greed. The thing is that one of the things that we also find out within Season 11 is the fact that Clutch had a best-selling book. Again, Booby Traps and How to Survive Them. And this book has been within the show literally up until this very day. We still see the book in Dragon's Rising. It was regarded as one of the biggest pieces of media within the course of Ninjago's universe. Of course, it must have netted Clutch Powers a lot of money, to put it simply. So what if his ultimate greed and the laziness actually got to him, because by all accounts he had finished life? Clutch is very vain throughout the course of the show. He never foregoes any sort of luxury that he could have access to. Look no further than the island where he asks his apprentices to carry around a sunbed with him. He cannot go a single moment without anything that would have cost a lot of money. So what if it was that when he did get all of that money from the book, what if he just simply kind of gave up? He never really had any sort of further reason to be able to do so. He had never really any sort of incentive because he was sorted out by all accounts. And of course, this links back to Movie Clutch, because this is before he had any sort of financial infrastructure. He doesn't really seem to have a lot of money throughout the course of the movie, and you could even imply it as far as, like I said in Season 1. He's of course renowned, but he wasn't renowned for the fact that he made a book, he was renowned for the fact that he made the Fang Cup. So it definitely seems to be a case of he gained some sort of financial backing between the point of Season 1 and Season 11. So what if that was the root cause of him just simply no longer wanting to do what he actually did? And the last reason I believe this is the case is actually just down to his own self-worth. His own self-centeredness seems to have translated to a fairly high ego. Again, there's a lot of mention of him having some form of ego throughout the course of the show. He's Clutch Powers. So what again if that did translate into a lack of wanting to be an explorer? What if he just found himself so important and so self-centered that he believed he never really needed to? His reputation spoke for itself. So his whole mentality of, well, I'm Clutch Powers, I don't need to do that anymore, really did become what he ended up being within the course of the show. But those are the three reasons I believe that show Clutch can be linked back to movie Clutch. I do think it makes a lot of sense if you do consider it in that kind of downfall trajectory. I do think, ultimately speaking, it works. I think you can have both of these Clutches within the same universe and ultimately have a cohesive timeline. But the thing is that it doesn't even end there. I do have this idea of this duality of Clutch Powers, and it does show itself in a couple of different ways. Because I don't think Clutch is honestly happy with where he's at. He seems to not really be content in a lot of different ways. He seems to be materialistically content, but emotionally and mentally speaking, he doesn't seem to be. So I do think he is certainly trying to take actions as to be able to become the Clutch that he once was. For one, him actually going into that pyramid is somewhat proof. Obviously, Clutch, by all account, couldn't have. He could have just simply stayed there and not have gone with the ninja in any way. But he still does, because he seemingly still does have that itch to be the explorer that he once was. It's not even the only thing in regard to this point. The thing is that he also does the same thing in the island. Again, I bring up the fact that he brought a sunbed with him, but the thing is that he was still very much eager to actually explore. He still wanted that storm amulet, and he went to great lengths to be able to get it. Clearly, he wanted to do some sort of exploration again, and in the end, of course, his newer personality traits come into play because he takes it basically for vanity. But the thing is that he still has that drive seemingly. It's still present. The old Clutch is definitely still there. But in my opinion, there is a scene that a lot of people have mentioned, but not a lot of people have actually put too much thought about, and I do think it links in perfectly with what I've been talking about so far. Clutch definitely wants to be the old Clutch, and I think this links to the fact that he has the Teapot of Tyran. Clutch has been shown for a few seasons now to be in possession of the Teapot of Tyran, and the thing is that he has never actually been able to activate it. Of course, it seemingly is implied that he did in the Sweat into the Goldie short, but the canonicity of that short is yet to be seen. But if we do take specifically the show into account, you will note that he's never been able to open the teapot, but he seems to be very curious as to be able to do so. And a lot of people have wondered, what Clutch actually wants with Narukon the Djinn, and I do think I actually knows at least what one of his 3 wishes are. Because I think it ties back to this secret end game of Clutch. Of course, I don't know every single wish because I don't think I could figure that out, and of course Narukon wouldn't want to grant him 3 wishes, but I do think I know for a fact one thing that he wants is to become the old Clutch once more. Because when you take into account the fact that he has attempted more exploration, and also he has definitely retained his exploration knowledge, you can look at it in the sense of, what if Clutch has acknowledged the fact that he's become too clouded in his own self-worth, in his own vanity, and his own self-centered entitlement? What if Clutch, by all accounts, wants to ask Narukon to go back to what Clutch Powers once was? Like I said, the eager, hard-working, self-determined, and for the people explorer that he was that we saw in the movie, or in earlier Ninjago specifically. What if Clutch just simply wants to go back to a time where not only was he respected by not only the people, but he respected himself? Because in the grand sense, I think that is what he wants. I think by all accounts, he just wants to be the Clutch that he remembers. I think Clutch does want to become what he once was because he very clearly was happy with it at the time. I think he just became so drowned in what became that I think he lost sight of what he once was, and I think he just simply wants that back. On an overall, I do think there is a very interesting duality when it does come to Clutch Powers. I do think by all accounts, movie Clutch and show Clutch is the same Clutch. I think it makes complete sense to understand that they can be the same. Just simply put, the character was transplanted from the movie into the show itself. And I do think I've demonstrated a fairly comfortable timeline as to how Clutch could have become what we actually do get to see in the show. Because ultimately speaking, I do think if movie Clutch was 1-for-1 with show Clutch, I don't think it would have been too interesting, because by all accounts he would have just been another one of the ninja. Of course, he fits that kind of caricature, the protagonist of the respective show or movie, but I do think this more jaded version is very interesting to see. But this is actually where I want to hear what you guys think. Because do you agree with this timeline I presented for Clutch? And also, do you believe that it could be the same Clutch Powers? I would love to know what you guys think, because I do think it is fairly interesting. I do think there's a lot of reason to believe that it is the same character. But if you do have an alternative theory, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about Clutch. Because ultimately, it is a very interesting character, and to clear up these earlier years of the character would be very nice to actually see. And not only that, do you believe what I believe when it does come to Clutch's endgame? Do you think that is his ultimate goal with the Teapot of Tyran? Do you think he wants to become the explorer that he once was before? Because honestly, I don't see any other reason for him to be so curious about Narukon the Djinn. But again, that is just my own theory. I would love to know what you think. But thank you very much for watching the video, and I do hope you enjoyed. And if you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. I love talking about Ninjago with more people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always consider becoming a channel member. You could also join the Legends on Screen. Thank you very much, everyone, and a particular shout out to Grandmaster Sensei 28208. Thank you very much for supporting the Eternal Legend. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay,